reveals how much of a sick MFer Donald Trump is, how he will use these institutions to protect himself, use them to enrich himself. He's talking more about the ballroom than he is affordability, more about the ballroom.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're reacting to a debate between Adam Mockler and Chris Cuomo about government transparency and democratic strategy. This conversation gets into some really important questions about accountability and political priorities right now. Make sure you watch until the end. Please comment down where you are watching from. It's great to see people from over the world connecting in here. All right, now let's get into the video.
Found urgency. Is it just to hurt Trump?
Yeah, first of all, the newfound urgency is because of Trump's insane actions surrounding the files. It seems like Trump is using the federal power to protect not only the people in these files, but now he's targeting people selectively that he thinks might be in the files. But number one, the investigation was still partially ongoing under Biden. And to Prince Andrews, that investigation was only just recently dropped. Secondly, Biden's admin wasn't so openly just playing defense. There's a few key things that have happened that people are forgetting. Remember, the Trump FBI edited out 1 minute of Epstein's cell footage and then had no answer for that. Trump moved Ghislaine Maxwell to a low-security prison and gave her special privileges. Trump's name was mentioned thousands of times. I just think the circumstances surrounding this are way different than anything under Biden's term, when a lot of the investigation was still ongoing. And one more thing, Biden wasn't weaponizing his DOJ in the same way that Trump is. Trump is openly sending letters to Pam Bondi saying, yo, Pam Bondi, you should go after this person, investigate this person might be guilty. Biden never did that with Merrick Garland, so I just think it's different.
Well, he certainly didn't do it the same way. Two things. One, you're right, people forget. This was also going on during the first Trump administration, okay? And there were Democrats who had urgency during the first Trump administration that then didn't have the same urgency during the Biden administration. And the second thing is that, yes, I understand the point of what has changed, but where do you expect this to go?
I just want full transparency. As an American citizen, I find it quite scary when the president seems to be using the institutions around him to protect some elites who seem to be pedophiles. I mean, Alan Dershowitz before was drawing the distinction between people who liked 17-year-olds versus 14-year-olds versus 9-year-olds. The woman, now she's a woman, like in present day, but she was talking about it. She was 14 years old. She was a girl. Yeah. When her parents came and talked to Jeffrey Epstein. So it's just, it's all definitely disgusting. I think what I want from this is a bit more transparency. I think that this
release the files.
The lack of transparency can be seen all across the administration. Like, remember, we haven't seen economic numbers from the BLS in 2 to 3 months now.
I agree.
Now, this lack of transparency can be seen everywhere. Like, they don't release the economic numbers. They don't release the files. Over and over, we just see a lack of transparency regarding crypto, regarding other transactions with Trump. It's weird.
I'm with you. I'm telling you. But I just feel like all that matters more. Okay, even the hiding of the statistics, the hiding of ICE statistics, and they keep quoting things that they won't release to everybody else in real time. I care about that more than this. I think this is a boogeyman. I think this is a boogeyman. And you can't convince me that with all the stuff that Democrats looked at and scrubbed and tried with to go after Trump, they had all of this important material in the Epstein files and just didn't use it. Well, it just doesn't make any sense to me that Ghislaine Maxwell has never come out and dropped a dime. She got sent to a lesser security prison, a better prison. That's what happens when you ask somebody who's in prison to do something, like talk to an investigator. They ask for something back. Her attorneys say it's not as cush as it's being made out to, but I'm still with you. Release all the files. I just don't get that energy right now when these other things matter more than Epstein's files.
You know what drives me insane about this whole conversation? The idea that demanding transparency is somehow partisan or manufactured. Like Adam said, there are concrete actions Trump took that nobody can explain away. The FBI edited surveillance footage. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's documented fact. And everyone just moved on like that's normal? Here's what people don't get. When you move a federal prisoner to a lower security facility and grant special privileges, that sends a message. That tells other potential witnesses exactly what happens when you keep your mouth shut. It's not complicated. This is how powerful people have always operated, through signals, through favors, through making sure everyone knows the cost of cooperation versus the benefits of silence. And the comparison to Biden's DOJ is so important because it shows the difference between normal investigative processes and what we're seeing now. Biden wasn't sending personal letters saying, "Go after this person." That's the difference between institutional independence and personal vendetta politics. When Trump's name appears thousands of times in these documents, and then he starts making moves to suppress information, that's not abstract. That's direct self-interest overriding public accountability. The whole "where was the urgency under Biden" argument completely misses that investigations were ongoing. Cases were still being actively pursued. The system was still working, even if slowly. Now we're watching active suppression. There's a massive difference between bureaucratic slowness and deliberate obstruction. And watching people conflate those two things is exactly how accountability dies, by making everything seem equally bad so nothing seems urgent. What really gets me is how quickly people forget Trump's entire history with abusing power dynamics. The dressing room incidents, the "they let you do it" mentality, this isn't new behavior. It's a decades-long pattern. And now he has more institutional power than ever before to protect himself and his associates.
Well, listen, this is a boogeyman that clearly resonates with tens of millions of Americans because they're sick of powerful
Yes.
people, powerful men in particular, abusing these power imbalances that exist within the structure to then benefit themselves, to hide stuff for themselves, and to let Jeffrey Epstein or the people in his immediate circle get away. Now, Donald Trump, throughout his entire life, has abused power imbalances whenever he got the chance, whether it's him walking into dressing rooms of beauty pageants that he owns, whether it's him grabbing women because they let him do it. And now that he has the ultimate power as the president of the United States, millions of Americans are like, we're sick of this. We're sick of watching the president cover stuff up when just 10 years ago, Jeffrey Epstein was emailing with Michael Wolff saying that they had leverage over Trump. They were essentially emailing about the leverage they could potentially have over Trump. What
Right,
leverage?
I'm with you.
What's
But
out there?
Adam, look, Epstein is the last guy we should be believing, okay? And Michael Wolff can explain it any way he wants. But this guy's a dirtbag. Okay, so I don't know that I necessarily believe anything that Epstein was saying because he was a rapacious liar and victimizer. But I'm with you about your critiques and why people want it. Let's remember, it started on the right. And when they believed that they were all lefties, everybody wanted it to come out. Everybody thought that Clintons killed Jeffrey Epstein. I'm with you. But here's my thing. And I see this on affordability also. That's what people are really pissed off about. You guys have high ground on it for now. Trump is going to start running around the country saying it's his issue. And let me be honest, he's a better salesman than you guys. But why not focus there on affordability? And don't say we'll do two things at once. You know we can't. Okay,
It's not
you
that.
know it
I
doesn't
mean,
happen.
You want a real raw strategy answer? It's that Donald Trump has spent the past 24 hours melting down about Jeffrey Epstein on Truth Social, trying to defend himself for whatever, God knows what reason. You can intuit what reason, but he's melting down on Truth Social rather than focusing on affordability. And like I just said, you can use this lack of transparency on Epstein as a framework to see his lack of transparency on affordability, on the releasing of economic numbers. I think that just thinking that Democrats should ditch the Epstein issue, I don't know what the strategy would be there. The Epstein issue is important to millions of Americans, and it reveals how much of a sick MFer Donald Trump is, how he will use these institutions to protect himself, use them to enrich himself. He's talking more about the ballroom than he is affordability, more about the ballroom than he is Epstein. And like, I don't get your issue with us talking about two things at once. Trump talked about the border wall, the economy, and a few other things. We can talk about his cruelty, the economy.
The boogeyman framing is such a revealing moment because it shows how desensitized we've become to corruption. Calling something a boogeyman implies it's fake, it's manufactured fear. But everything Adam listed, the edited footage, the prison transfers, the thousands of document mentions, those are facts. You don't get to call documented evidence a boogeyman just because it's politically inconvenient. And this idea that Democrats would have used this material if they had smoking guns. That fundamentally misunderstands how investigations work and how political calculations operate. Democrats were terrified of looking like conspiracy theorists. Remember how careful they were during impeachment? How measured every step was. That caution wasn't stupidity, it was fear of being dismissed as unserious. But that caution also meant letting legitimate questions go unasked because they seemed too explosive. Here's what nobody wants to admit. The reason key witnesses haven't talked isn't because they have nothing to say. It's because they know exactly what happens to people who cross the powerful. Jeffrey Epstein ended up dead in his cell with edited surveillance footage. You think that doesn't send a message? Every potential witness watched that happen. Every attorney calculated those odds. Silence becomes rational when the alternative is that dangerous. The frustration in Adams' response about transparency across the board, that's the real issue. When you hide economic data, when you suppress investigative findings, when you classify information that should be public, you create an environment where accountability becomes impossible. It's not about any single issue, it's about building a wall between the public and the truth on every front simultaneously. And yeah, release all the files, not selectively, not with redactions that conveniently protect certain people, everything. Because partial transparency is just PR management. Real accountability requires uncomfortable revelations about people on every side. That's what actually draining any swamp would look like. And it's exactly what will never happen as long as the people in power benefit from keeping secrets.
Here's why, Adam. Here's why. Here's why. He talked about them because that's his deal. It's not about doing anything, right? He talks about them. And he's a great salesman. That's the con. In con man is about confidence and the ability to sell. I don't believe you guys could do two things at once. I don't. I've never seen the Democrats execute any kind of strategy, let alone a dual one. I'm saying you have the right issue right now. I think the shutdown was the wrong way to do it. But right now, people in America, at least until the Epstein stuff, which you guys brought back up, right? When you had the opportunity to say, hey, so what's your plan, MAGA, for bringing down costs? If you say we're making it up about the subsidies and reimbursements and how to get costs down, what's your plan? They don't have one.
The good thing is,
jump on that.
Affordability will likely come back to the forefront because the ACA subsidies are still set to expire next month. I believe they expire.
Yeah,
I have a
that's
friend
true.
whose mom didn't even know she was reliant on these subsidies until the entire shutdown debacle happened. Then she realized, wait a minute, I'm reliant on these subsidies. Now she's hyper-focusing on what's happening, and she was apolitical before, too. So now she's watching, and it's going to be pretty clear which party shoots down the extension to the ACA subsidies and which party is fighting for lower premiums. So we could still pivot to this affordability issue, but, dude, Trump is squirming. Let us put Trump into a corner. He's squirming right now. Do you see his True Social posts? This dude is squirming.
Yes.
The strategy debate here is fascinating because Cuomo's essentially saying, pick your battles, while Adams arguing that Trump himself made this a battle by melting down on Truth Social. And Adams absolutely right about that. You don't get to tell Democrats to ignore an issue that Trump is actively, publicly, desperately trying to control. When someone's squirming, you don't look away. You ask why. This whole Democrats can't do two things at once. Criticism drives me up a wall because Republicans literally built an entire political movement on doing exactly that. They talked about immigration and the economy and cultural issues simultaneously. The idea that Democrats uniquely lack this ability is just, it's not even a real critique. It's learned helplessness disguised as strategic advice. And connecting transparency on these investigations to economic transparency? That's not changing subjects. That's identifying a pattern. When an administration hides BLS data, suppresses investigation results, and refuses to release public records about crypto dealings, those aren't separate scandals. That's a governance philosophy. Keep the public in the dark and hope they're too overwhelmed to connect the dots. The ACA subsidies example perfectly illustrates Adams' point about how these issues converge. His friend's mom didn't know she relied on those subsidies until they were threatened. That's not political awareness. That's direct material impact finally breaking through the noise. And that's when people start paying attention to patterns of transparency and accountability, when the abstract becomes personal. Trump squirming on Truth Social isn't a distraction from affordability. It reveals his priorities. He's spending energy defending himself instead of addressing grocery prices. That tells you everything about what actually matters to him. And pointing that out isn't strategic malpractice. It's showing voters who their president really is when he thinks nobody's watching. The whole conversation ends on that note. Trump is squirming. And historically, that's when the most revealing information comes out. Not when everything's calm, but when powerful people feel cornered and start making mistakes. That's when transparency matters most. So what do you think of this? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.